years. I think the next 3 or 4 years are going to be unbelievable for Curry.
George on the fly and a three. Paul George. His $22 million contract with his performance in the playoffs. George, three, down and got it.
Deep shot off the catch.
George weaves his way out of defensive trouble. Their first lead here in the opening frame. George fires the three. It looked rushed, but
Whatever, man.
that was quite the discussion there. George, and it settles in.
Injuries and Zion not really being on the court.
George. Zoo rolls. George fires and knocks it down. Paul George. George going 2 for 1. The three. Oh my goodness!
Have to execute and win a game on the road when it counts down the stretch.
George for three. Got it! His second game with the Grizzlies. George curling, catching, and connecting. Do not shove it.
There you go. There you go.
He's inside.
Players Association as well.
Well, you know why he's so smart, right? I mean, he's highly intelligent, like Paul George.
Get yourself out of a slump like this.
Well, it depends, too, because it depends on the makeup of your team. And you're going to be open, but took it away.
George, a quick spin, fades, and fires. All 4 of his
% for the game. Clippers 27. Paul George got it going early with the three. They're taking it into the paint this time tentatively and used 8-point Blazer spread. Clippers struggling, 29% shooting. George in the air, flutters one up and in.
And then start at Hartenstein. Doesn't give the Clippers enough time to send that double team they want.
Paul George, follow-away jumper, got it. 12-point Blazer lead. Paul George trying to get it off, does from three. Yes, and here's Paul George now back in the game at the 7:32 mark. He goes to work in the paint, fakes a pass, spins, corkscrews, and hits a follow-away jumper.
terrific start here in this young season. Drives on Kenrich Williams, fades, fires, and on cue, knocks down the jumper.
Influence the shot. That's GA.
George for three.
70 possessions here for the Clippers down the stretch. It's a key.
George, a tough shot over the outstretched fingertips of Williams for a youngster.
Well, yeah, but the game plan for the Clippers, see Paul George pull up for contested three.
Along with 27 points. Clippers are down by 6. George, can he do it again? Yes, sir! George for the lead.
Set the hook that time, baby.
It's the first second chance bucket of the game for the Wolves. Paul George
Didn't take over a game.
it just turned 20 back in August. Oh, George.
You've got to swing it to the backside. That's where the open player is.
Paul George.
Unreal. Kitten Noel's in the game, too, by the way, from Minnesota. Easy play by Paul George. Just sit.
Start shooting the basketball from 3 for the Hornets. 3 out of 5. Paul George gets.
George not covered with room to roam. Twisting and turning, fading and firing.
6 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists on average. And a 4-0 week, and George has got it cooking early. High expectations this season. George off to a great start tonight. Little shake and bake. High. Al's been given the heavy burden of guarding George. He scored some points as well. Little step back three, and George.
The ball reversed to the other side of the floor. They played 2-on-2 on one side.
Counted, continuation for George, and 1. Damian Lillard on George. He goes to work. He spins twice. He is fouled, and 1. Paul George.
You can't give him a side to choose from. When he does that, he's going to be impossible to stop.
George reclines on the defender. 4 rebounds and 2 assists in the first quarter. George for 3. It's good. The second 3 for the Clippers. 19 from the three-point line. Clippers creeping back into it. George from the line to the range of the rim. Takes it to the house. And he's got Miami playing some of the best basketball in the Eastern Conference. George, a contested jump.
He should have shot the first one. Great hustle that time by Paul George.
Skyward, pulled down by Paul George. Clippers don't have numbers. George does not seem to care. Into the paint, to the rim with the right hand. Wow! Bulls just 4 of 14 here in the third quarter, so the defense has a say. Get in there, counted on a foul. Paul George with 19, and the Clippers looking for the lead. George puts it up off the window. It's good. Are you kidding me? We're on the other side. You're not going to erase this deficit on one possession. George for a contested three. It rattled. 4-point lead for the Spurs. George, reorganizing in mid.
You mentioned the fact that of all games for him to miss, this one's so vital because San Antonio plays so many of those wing-type players.
Paul George. George given some space and knocks it down. He's looking around the horn far side to George. Late on the clock. Step away three. Wow. Paul George. And have outscored the Clippers 33-30. In a high-scoring second frame. George lowers his shoulder. Bump going up. Count it and a foul.
George, step back three, put it in with 1.2. Paul George. Picked up by Brooks. Fadeaway three is in for Paul George.
It's the 9 and 6 LA Clippers. It'll be Paul George too close for comfort. And on his triples to start the night. Good challenge. Paul George gets it in.
Isolation basketball.
Paul George on the step back. Is because of this end of the floor. They've held the Clips to 78 points on 40%. Paul George rattles it.
George tries to play a two-man game with Zoo. Calls his own number. Reorganizes. It was 7 to shoot for the Clippers. Drives in on Bullock. He goes to the house. Oh my! Hello, by George. 5 to shoot. George steps away. Fires the three. It's good for Paul. Now late for Paul George. Going to have to bail out the Clippers with a mid-range jumper. George drives it on Brunson, swivels to the baseline, puts it up off the window.
This is the isolation, the complete side of the floor.
Oh my! They go to the traditional post up for George. Turns and fires, and he knocks down his first. Coffee sets the screen and then flares out on the wing. George draws the foul. Count them.
Watch you coming out in the zone defense. They're back in the man right now. The Mavericks. You see Paul George just manipulating the.
George, the step away for the tie. Oh my goodness! He put it in.
And play defense. That's how I'm gonna make my money in this league. And his self-awareness like that of Paul George.
And the Warriors now lead 72-66. George retaliates. Oh, book it!
Yeah.
Still 23 of 50, however, on the season. He has been
That gives you a little breathing room to come out strong in the third quarter. See Paul George pull up for the shot right on.
Clippers only 6 shots in the first 6 minutes of the fourth quarter. George. Book it for
Paul George, go-to guy. Spin on Reeves. Impossible to.
Paul George. One dribble turn. Fires and hits. Man, that was.
Unless you know there's no defender in front, not even a three-quarter front. Give him the ball.
Covington goes to Paul George, bracing, working on Tony Snell as a step. Nurk shows, forcing Paul outside for a drifting. Followage there in perfect position to get it. Back to Paul, gallops into the lane, sneaks to the hole and scoops and scoops. Paul George, head down, shoulders leaning, right to the cup for the two-hand delivery. Got Morris and Kennard, 2 3-point shooters on the left. But George working on an ISO, sweeping it right to left, firing and hitting.
Early, make Paul George see bodies.
George crosses, sweeps it right back to Larry Nance. It sticks, a tough shot.
drives on McDermott, stops on a dime, heaves the mid-range, and the jumper looks good.
But Brian, part of the challenge when you're talking about you want to control the paint, see Paul George with an excellent
And tonight, I don't like watching him, I guess, tonight. 17 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists in 28 minutes. Oh, my!
Paul George off the man screen. George working against Buddy Hield. And Paul George does that to a lot.
20-point Utah lead.
Just great ball movement there.
Paul George. And George again. Coffey's got the rebound, got a chance at the last shot. George running, 2-1. George, it's good, and a foul. But he hasn't been on the floor in a game since the 22nd of December. How about that? Pulled the string back.
Paul George, what a performance the other night in his return. This 3 months and 40 straight games. Uses the glass for the 2.
7-0 run.
They've cut the lead down to 3. Here is George on the drive, puts it in and a foul.
I'm gonna tell you right now, the Bulls have to make,
including 7 of 7 from the three-point line. George for 3. Oh, he knocked it down.
Was a big catalyst for North Carolina in the title game. Had that little reversal, had an upset stomach.
Honing his playoff defense, and then
all we're trying to do is play hard here, run through the tape, be professional to close out their final couple of ball games. That's a good sign for the Clippers because that game should have ended at least 45 minutes before. 22-11. Here is George again, and I'll say this:
the organization going to figure this thing out and kind of get some stabilization.
George on the wing for 3. It is good.
Vanderbilt comes to help. He needs to do exactly that. Shadow him right off his back.
George with a 3. Good looking.
Of this Minnesota team being able to switch everything.
Paul George 12 in the quarter. 3. Good.
Wow. Yeah,
Fifth at 10 man to George, who has caught fire since halftime and working on McDaniels.
There's no defense.
Beautiful midcourt, losing some time right there. McDaniels will defend. Uncorks a 3.